If, for example, you were taking the data off Gapminder, let's wait for it to load. Yeah. So if you were taking it off Gapminder, then you pick whichever category it is that you're looking at. So, for example, I'm just going to take this one because it's at the top. This might be the data that I'm looking at, and the data is available for loads of countries and for loads of years, but it's not necessarily every country, even though it might look like it is. Or if you're using a different website, sometimes they say they're every country and they're not always. So the best thing to do is if we press this button here, XLSX, then that downloads it for us into a Excel spreadsheet. So if we open that up, then this is all of the data for the children per woman, so the fertility rate of each country, and there's loads and loads of data there. So obviously you don't need every single year, and you're definitely not going to need these really old years. So you're going to delete any data that you don't want. So we're literally just deleting the columns. And then you need to choose which year you want to use. And that's going to vary depending if your variables link directly or not. So for example, if you're using something like education and how that's then impacted something, you might want to use your education as like 10 years before what it's impacted, because otherwise it could be that you're not letting that education rate kind of have an effect. So it depends what you're doing as to how you want to do that, okay? Once you've got the data that you want, so for example, I've took 2015. This one seems to have predicted way into the future. So I've took 2015, and this is for the fertility rate. You can then go back onto Gapminder and you can look for the other piece of data that you wanted. So maybe you were looking at that and comparing it to life expectancy. So then again, we've got all the data for life expectancy. And then we need to download it as a separate spreadsheet, the same as we did last time. So we're just going to press the XLSX and download this one. And it might look like the same list of countries, but it's often different. So again, I just need to delete any years that I don't want. My computer's really slow, sorry. So I'm going to try and take 2015 if it's available to look at the same thing. Oops, I've just deleted it. So I want this column here, and then I'm just going to copy those two columns and I'm going to put them on the other sheet with the fertility rates. Okay, so I'm just going to copy those on there, and I'm going to leave a column in between. And then so that I remember which is which, because I've seen people hand in IAs where they've used the wrong variable because they forgot which was which. So please make sure you label it, because that's not going to go well. So I've got life expectancy and fertility, and then I need to copy them across so that they're in one column. So Afghanistan, Albania, Algeria, and then you can see the next one is different. So those three are the same. So I can directly copy those ones or cut those ones and put them over here. But then I've got Andorra in this list, but it's not in this list. So I now need to make sure I'm very careful about how I match it up. There's no point including a country that you don't have two data sets for. So if that happens, then you're going to need to just delete Andorra. Like, you can't use it because you don't have the fertility rate information on it. Okay, and then you can carry on copying down the next few. So Australia and Austria, they seem to be the same. So you just need to be really careful about copying them. If, for example, Azerbaijan had its fertility rate, but it didn't come up in this column, then again, just delete it, because you can't use it. It has to be the same for both of them. Okay, so let's imagine that we very carefully copied these exactly correct and made sure everything matches up. We've then finished with this. We don't need it. Any countries that were left, we can't use. So we're now left with the life expectancy and the fertility of both 2015. And now we need to take a random sample. So this is all of my countries, but I don't necessarily want to include every country. I'm probably going to want to take a sample of it. And if you're doing one with various countries, or anything like this, then we normally say a good sample size is like 40 to 50. If you've got a lot less, then let me know if it's because your data wasn't available or what it might be. So we now need to randomly sample it. So I'm going to write equals and then rand, like random, and click this, and then just press enter, and that generates a random number. And then if I like hold on to the small square at the bottom, the green square, I can drag that down, and I can do that right to the bottom of my list. And every time I type something, you'll see all of those numbers change. So they're all between 1 and 0. And every time I do anything, they just change each time. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go across the top. Let's write random in here. And I'm going to highlight these different things. So this is my country. You can see it keeps changing. So I'm highlighting my column titles, and I'm going to do sort and filter, and I'm going to add a filter. And that just means that the data and the countries kind of stick together. It's not going to jumble them up. And now I can rearrange the data into ascending order. And now I've got the countries in a random order, and they're all following these numbers. So now I can take the top however many I want pieces of data, and that's a random sample because it's generated it into a random order. So I've now got a random sample of data, and then that's what you're going to be using for the whole IA. Okay, has anyone got any questions on that?